Hello everybody, it's Hater. Welcome back to another Destiny 2 build video, and welcome to Season of the Plunder, featuring Arc 3.0 and possibly a missing peg leg. Today, we are going to be talking about Arc 3.0 because after hours upon hours of ISP problems and mental warfare, I was finally able to get my hands on Arc 3.0 for the Warlock. And let me tell you guys, this is easily my favorite subclass in the entire game right now. We're going to be able to throw lightning grenades left and right, summon supercharged arc souls, chain lightning enemies, ionic traces everywhere, and then jump right into the storm trance that we had during Taken King. But as always guys, before we start breaking down the build itself, if you enjoy the video and you found this build helpful, the best way to show support is by giving the video a like and subscribing, so you'll never miss out on a brand new build video. To start off, for the exotic, we're going to be using Crown of Tempest. This also got a slight rework where Bungie had to rephrase some of the stuff in its text, but now whenever you get arc ability kills or jolt final blows, it increases the recharge rate of your arc abilities and extend the duration of storm trance. Arc abilities also include your super energy. Jolt is going to be one of the new terms that was added to Arc 3.0. It is basically Arc Web from Top Tree's Stormcaller, but kicked up to 11. Basically, if you have any ability that can apply the Jolted debuff, hitting an enemy with it will charge them with arc energy and cause them to chain lightning to everything nearby them. This is what is going to be our foundation for the entire build. Everything else here is just going to help amplify that even further. Moving over to the subclass, let's talk about what I'm using. For starters, we're going to be using Storm Trance. Like we talked about earlier, this is going to synergize with our Crown of Tempest and have a much longer duration while we are killing enemies with it. Healing Rift is going to be my rift of choice, mainly because there's not really any strong healing or defensive options when using Arc 3.0. If we had something like the restoration buff that Solar 3.0 had, I would have opted for Empowering Rift in this situation. For the melee attack, I like using Ball Lightning, mostly because it's a ranged melee attack. It's going to travel a good amount of distance and get the job done for what I need it to do. Something else though that Bungie has modified to the Ball Lightning melee is that if you are amplified, it will enhance its effect. In this case, if we are amplified, meaning we have the new amplified buff, it will cause our Ball Lightning to explode 3 times in a larger radius instead of 1 time. Now for the grenade, this is going to be the most versatile option that you have out of all of the subclasses in the game, in my opinion. You could pretty much use whatever you want here as long as it's synergizing with the build. All of them are going to jolt because of our fragments when I get into that. All you need to do is just pick which one that you like. For me, my personal favorites include the Storm Grenade or the Pulse Grenade. Both of them are going to hit a large amount of enemies and also stay on the screen for a long period of time so that you can jolt more enemies. If you want to use something else, by all means, you have the option of doing so. This is just what I can recommend. Now for the big boys, the creme de la creme, the aspects and fragments. Arc 3.0 Warlock got 3 new aspects that you can use and change out to whatever you like them to be. For this build, we're just going to be sticking to 2 of them so you don't have any confusion. For the first aspect, this one might seem familiar. It's Arc Soul. If you remember, on Bottom Tree Stormcaller, you had Arc Souls whenever you laid your rift. This is the exact same thing, but in aspect form with a kicker. If you lay your rift, anyone who steps inside of it can gain an Arc Soul, which is a Arc Buddy on your shoulder that will shoot arc bullets at nearby enemies. If you are amplified though, your Arc Buddy is going to turn into a amplified Arc Buddy. This just means that they are going to be shooting more often. If you remember, the Getaway Artist Exotic Arms had a supercharged Arc Buddy whenever you consumed your grenade. This is that Arc Buddy, but just built right into the subclass itself. I honestly feel like now a Arc Warlock might be meta to bring into any of your raids, because having supercharged Arc Souls on demand like this is pretty lethal. As for the other aspect though, we're going to be using the new one, Electrostatic Mine. All this does is whenever we defeat targets with an arc ability, or jolted or blinded enemies, they create an ionic trace, giving us ability energy back whenever we pick them up. They will also make us amplified whenever we pick them up. This is going to function as the main way for us to become amplified and a great source of ability energy on top of everything else we're using in this build. Either way though, let's talk about the fragments. This is probably the most important part of the subclass itself, because what we can do here is mix and match so much so that it changes just how the build functions entirely. If we don't want to jolt enemies, we don't jolt enemies. If we don't want to use grenades, we don't use grenades. You could do a lot here. But just to keep things simple, let's talk about what I'm using in this build. And to start off on the left, the first fragment is Spark of Shock. Your arc grenades jolt targets. Very simple. All this does is make all of our grenades that we have equipped right now apply the jolt effect. This is what I meant earlier by you can just use whatever grenade you want. They're all going to jolt no matter what. And because we are using a grenade focused build, the next fragment, Spark of Magnitude, is going to cause our lingering arc grenades. This includes a lightning grenade, pulse grenade, and storm grenade to have extended duration. Again, I'm using this because it can synergize with the storm and pulse grenades. If you're not using storm or pulse grenades, you can change this out to something else to fit your needs. We've gone to the next fragment, Spark of Discharge. Arc weapon final blows have a chance to create an ionic trace. All this does is whenever we get kills with arc weapons, it will create an ionic trace from Middle Tree Stormcaller like we had before and give us ability energy whenever we pick it up. In the long run, giving us more ability energy on top of Crown of Tempest and our elemental wells at the same time. For the last fragment, you could use two different fragments depending on your type of playstyle. The one I like to use is Spark of Focus. After sprinting for a short time, your class ability regeneration is increased. Very simple, you run and all of a sudden you're gaining your class ability faster. This mostly synergizes with Arc Soul and just allows me to gain my Arc Souls even faster. Something else you could use though is Spark of Recharge. While you're critically wounded, your melee and grenade energy recharges faster. If you feel like you're in that endgame content scenario and you have constant low HP, you can get the most out of this. But if you're at full HP at almost all times, it's pretty much useless. Now that we are properly done with the brand new subclass, let's finally talk about the armor mods we'll be using in the build. And something that I want to focus on is the type of weapons you're bringing in the build. You can pretty much use anything that you want that is considered arc. As you can tell in the background footage, I use multiple different loadouts of my choosing. You could use something like Trinity Ghoul, the new Delicate Tomb, or if you're a new player, Risk Runner, or even Ikelos SMG if you happen to have one. My personal favorite though is definitely going to be Salvager Salvo. Pairing it with an Arc 3.0 build like this just kicks it up to a whole nother level. As for the armor itself, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need at least two of our armor pieces Solar, one of our armor pieces Stasis, and then one of our armor pieces Void. Starting off over at the Crown of Tempest, this is the first armor piece you're going to want as Solar. The reason for that is Ashes to Assets and Bountiful Wells. Ashes to Assets is going to give us even more super energy on top of Conduction Tines whenever we get kills with our grenade. Since we're using such a heavily grenade focused and ability focused build, this is going to give us a lot of super energy very fast. Bountiful Wells at the end though is going to allow all of our mods that create elemental wells to create one extra well for each mod equipped. So if we have one mod equipped, for example, one elemental ordnance, instead of creating one elemental well, it'll create two. If we equip two of the mod at once, it'll create three instead of two. Moving on down to the arms now, this is the armor piece you're going to want as Stasis so you can pair Grenade Kickstart with the build. Grenade Kickstart is going to refund grenade energy whenever you use your grenade. So if you use your grenade, you gain like 10% of it back just for free. As for the mod at the very end though, Elemental Ordnance, you get kills with your grenade, it creates an elemental well that matches your subclass typing, meaning we pick it up and we gain free energy for all of our abilities, and it also creates two because we're using Bountiful Wells. Moving on over to the chest piece, this is the one you're going to want as Void because they brung back Thermoshock plating. If you remember, using thermoshock plating with a void resistance mod at the same time is going to allow you to take reduced damage from all 3 element typings at the same time. This paired along with 100 resilience is going to make you extremely tanky. For the mod at the very end though, Font of Might, since we are gaining a ionic trace whenever we get kills with a arc weapon, and we also become amplified when we get kills with arc weapons, Font of Might is going to increase the damage of those weapons whenever we pick up a arc elemental well. Moving on down to the boots now, this is the only armor piece that I have as a neutral element. You can use whatever you want here, any kind of energy works. The reason for that is elemental armaments. All this does is, since we are using arc weapons to create ionic traces and elemental wells, this allows us to create an elemental well whenever we get kills with those weapons. Very simple. It'll also create 2 elemental wells instead of 1 because of bountiful wells. Finally though, moving down to the class item, this is where you can pretty much do whatever you want with your mods. The only thing that matters is that you have it as solar and use 2 bomber mods, so whenever you use your class ability to gain arc souls, you also reduce the cooldown of your grenade instantaneously. The mod at the very end though, this can change up quite a bit depending on what you like. For me, I like using Font of Wisdom. Whenever we pick up an elemental well that matches our subclass typing, it will cap out our intellect for a period of time. This just helps me gain my super back faster. You could use anything that you want here. For example, you could use melee well maker so that your melee will also create elemental wells, another elemental ordnance so you get more elemental wells just by using your grenade, or an elemental armaments for even more elemental wells on your weapon kills. All of these are great alternatives. Font of Wisdom is just what I like to use. And that is going to be the build for today's video. Arc 3.0. Man, I love this. I love it. I love it. I love it. I can't get over just how much fun Arc 3.0 is, especially for the Warlock. There's so many things that we can do with it, and I'm going to have a lot of fun experimenting with different kinds of builds for each kind of super. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments, or you can also come ask me over at my Twitch where I stream Destiny 2 or even some other games. You could also show some support over there by dropping a follow. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to catch you in the next one. Bye bye.